In a world filled with anxiety, division, and distraction, Paul's words in Philippians 4 offer a radically countercultural invitation. Rejoice in the Lord always. This isn't shallow optimism. It's a call to spiritual clarity, relational healing, and mental renewal. Through a series of pastoral instructions, Paul guides us from conflict to peace, from anxious thoughts to purposeful meditation, showing that the path to joy begins not in changing our circumstances, but in recentering our minds and hearts on what is true, honorable, and eternally good. Rejoicing in the Lord encompasses a profound sense of joy that stems from serving Him in our daily lives. It means finding true happiness and fulfillment in living out our faith and embracing the values that He embodies. While not everyone may have the calling to become a minister or take on formal roles within the church, each of us has the opportunity to serve the Lord in our everyday actions and interactions. This service manifests in various ways, such as demonstrating integrity in our choices and standing firm in our principles, even when faced with challenges. Embracing honesty allows us to build trust and foster genuine relationships, reflecting the character of Christ. Humility is also a crucial aspect, as it enables us to prioritize the needs of others and approach life with a spirit of gratitude and openness. Moreover, our love for one another is a vital expression of rejoicing in the Lord. It encourages us to treat others with kindness, compassion, and respect, creating a supportive community that mirrors the love God has for us. Lastly, a commitment to seeking and upholding the truth reinforces our relationship with the Lord, guiding us to live authentically and righteously. In essence, rejoicing in the Lord is about allowing our hearts to overflow with joy as we engage in these acts of service and embody the teachings of Christ in all aspects of our lives. Joy that defies circumstance, praise that rises in prison, a heart anchored not in ease, but in Christ. Today we open to Philippians chapter 4, not to escape the world, but to rejoice in the one who holds it. So breathe deep, turn the page, and let the words of Paul remind us, rejoice in the Lord always. Again I will say, rejoice.
Therefore, my beloved brethren, whom I long to see, my joy and crown, in this way stand firm in the Lord, my beloved. I urge Euodia and I urge Syntyche to live in harmony in the Lord. Indeed, true companion, I ask you also to help these women who have shared my struggle in the cause of the gospel, together with Clement also, and the rest of my fellow workers, whose names are in the book of life.
Philippians chapter 4 verses 1 to 3 is a profoundly personal appeal from Paul, urging the believers in Philippi to remain steadfast in their faith and united in spirit. He begins by expressing heartfelt affection, calling them his joy and crown, and exhorts them to stand firm in the Lord. Paul then gently addresses a conflict between two women, Euodia and Syntyche, who had previously labored alongside him in the gospel. Rather than taking sides, he pleads with both to be reconciled and to share the same mind in Christ. Finally, he calls on a trusted companion to help mediate, reminding the church that these women's names are written in the book of life, emphasizing their eternal value and shared identity in Christ. The passage weaves together themes of perseverance, relational harmony, and gospel-centered community. As Paul transitions into Philippians chapter 4, 4-7, his tone shifts from personal appeal to pastoral exhortation, but the context suggests he's still speaking directly to Euodia and Syntyche. Having just urged them to reconcile and reminded the church of their shared citizenship in heaven, Paul now offers the spiritual posture that makes such reconciliation possible. Rejoicing in the Lord, practicing gentleness, rejecting anxiety, and embracing prayerful trust. These verses are not abstract theology, they're relational medicine. Paul is guiding these women, and by extension the whole church, into the kind of gospel-centered mindset that heals division and cultivates peace. What follows is not just encouragement, it's instruction for how to live out unity in the presence of God.
Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I will say, rejoice. Let your gentle spirit be known to all men. The Lord is near. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
Philippians chapter 4, 4-7 offers a powerful prescription for spiritual resilience and relational healing. Paul exhorts believers to rejoice in the Lord always, not as a denial of hardship, but as a declaration of trust. He calls for gentleness to be evident to all, reminding them that the Lord is near. Instead of being consumed by anxiety, they are invited into a rhythm of prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving. The result is not merely emotional relief, but the peace of God, a supernatural calm that surpasses understanding and actively guards hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. These verses form a cohesive call to live with joy, humility, and dependence on God, especially in moments of tension or uncertainty. In the wake of Paul's plea for reconciliation between Euodia and Syntyche, his exhortation in verses 4-7 reads not as general encouragement, but as direct counsel to two women caught in a conflict of understanding. He doesn't tell them to resolve their disagreement by grasping more truth, but by entering into a deeper reality, rejoicing in the Lord, practicing gentleness, and surrendering anxiety through prayer. The peace of God, then, is not something unknowable or mysterious. It is something weightier than understanding. It surpasses it, not because it's incomprehensible, but because it's more essential. In a dispute over what is right, Paul points them to what is greater, the peace that guards hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. The idea that outward expression stems from inward reflection is the theological principle Paul presents in Philippians 4. Peace among believers does not arise from external resolutions. Rather, it originates from internal transformation. Paul does not start with advice to fix the conflict or settle the issue. Instead, he emphasizes rejoicing, gentleness, prayer, and thanksgiving, practices that reflect inward disciplines grounded in trust and shaped by grace. Only after addressing these inward aspects does he mention peace, not as a result of external achievements, but as a divine reality that protects both the heart and mind. Outwardness follows inwardness. Reconciliation, clarity, and commendable action are the fruit of a mind reoriented by what is true, lovely, and praiseworthy. Paul's strategy is not behavioral correction, it's spiritual formation. He knows that when God's presence quiets the soul, the hands and tongue will follow.
Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. The things you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you.
Philippians chapter 4, verses 8 and 9 presents a two-part exhortation focused on mental and behavioral discipline. In verse 8, Paul lists 8 moral and aesthetic qualities: true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, and praiseworthy, and commands believers to think on these things. The verb logizeste implies deliberate reflection or reckoning, not passive awareness. This mental focus serves as a safeguard against anxiety and moral distraction, linking back to the peace of God in verse 7. In verse 9, Paul shifts to imitation. Believers are to practice, prosete, what they have learned, received, heard, and seen in him. This fourfold pattern emphasizes both apostolic teaching and embodied example. The promise that the God of peace will be with you mirrors the earlier assurance of divine peace, now deepened by relational presence. Together, these verses form a strategy for spiritual stability through intentional thought and faithful action. Paul's strategy in Philippians 4:8-9 is not suppression but redirection. After addressing anxiety in verse 6 and offering the peace of God as a guard in verse 7, Paul doesn't leave the mind empty. He fills it. He knows that trying not to think about something, especially a source of anxiety, is a losing battle. Like the proverbial pink elephant, the harder we try to avoid a thought, the more power it gains. So instead of commanding avoidance, Paul offers a list. Whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, and praiseworthy. These are not distractions, they're replacements. They are intentional, substantive thoughts that reorient the heart toward what reflects God's character and presence. This is more than cognitive hygiene. It's spiritual formation. Paul isn't just telling Euodia and Syntyche to stop worrying or arguing. He's giving them a mental liturgy. Think on these things. Practice what you've seen in me. And the result isn't just peace, it's the presence of the God of peace. In other words, the strategy isn't to fight anxiety by force of will, but to cultivate a mind so filled with what is good that anxiety loses its grip. This is not escapism, it's formation. And it's precisely the kind of wisdom that turns relational tension into spiritual maturity. Think on what is true, like the quiet faith of a widow who still prays with gratitude, because resurrection is not a metaphor, but a promise. Or the honesty of a friend who confesses failure, knowing grace has made truth safe. Think on what is honorable, like the father who forgives without fanfare, or the leader who steps down rather than compromise conviction. Think on what is just, like the teacher who defends the overlooked child, or the judge who refuses to bend the law for gain. Think on what is pure, like the joy of a child's prayer, or the loyalty of a spouse who loves without manipulation. Think on what is lovely, like a meal delivered in silence, a letter written in hope, a hand held in grief. Think on what is commendable, like the nurse who stays late to comfort the dying, the artist who paints truth into a broken world, the believer who chooses joy in the face of sorrow. These are not distractions. They are glimpses of the kingdom. They are the things worth thinking on. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful to your own studies. If you did, please click thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.